And we're going to move on to the third ranked team in the final rankings, the Louisville Cardinals. And they had a very balanced offense. Just to explain what we're going to see right here, we're going to watch Louisville's. They're the white team on the opposite side of the camera. They're the first three rotation 1 attacks, and then the first 3 rotation 2 attacks, and we're going to see each of those attacks went to different players. But Mike, we can just start talking about kind of the importance of a balanced offense and why we want to have a balanced offense as a coach.
Yeah, so they set a left side ball here. Watch this play. This is interesting. Let's stop here. Let's watch that again real quick.
This is rotation 1.
So stop here. They've got a middle blocker coming in, and they're going to set her from, it looks like about the 3-meter line. And it's not even really a 2. It seems higher than a 2 to me, but certainly really high for a middle attack. But my guess is they're building a system around the ability of this athlete. She's physical. She can go up. She can take a rip. And now, rather than needing a perfect pass, we can be off the net and we can throw her a ball up there and let her go up and take a rip. And so that's an example of building a system around the ability of a player in your gym, finding ways to get your middle blockers more sets. And again, it's a Final Four team, slowing down things in the middle. In terms of the balanced offense conversation, I think what they're doing here is they're establishing their offense. They're setting everywhere, left, right, in the middle. And I think where I want the conversation to go here is just how do we balance getting everyone the ball versus, riding a hot hitter. And this is early in the match. And so maybe they don't know who the hot hitter is. And in every match, maybe there's a different hot hitter. But as the match progresses, and Sully and, Gary, you guys, and Jay, you guys have been, certainly you had hot hitters at times in the tournament this year. But as the match progresses, how do you manage that? How do you, if you're in a 4th set or a 5th set and you're battling to go to the Final Four, and you have, one of your best hitters who's hitting 400 and, the rest of the team's hitting 200, Sully, tell us how you manage that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of discussion with your setter about what they're doing and what they're doing situationally. I would assume that everybody's functioning the same way and that we're trying to keep track and chart not just what the offense is doing overall, but kind of positionally, rotations, matchup-wise, taking advantage of all those situations. As someone that looks on the defensive side probably a little bit more, like you're trying to find those matchups, right? Like where is their defense weak? Where can we attack it? So even in a situation where, you have a hot hitter, but all of a sudden you have a small setter out on the left, and your left side may not be the hottest hitter, but she might be the hottest hitter in that rotation, in that matchup, right? It's kind of trying not to look at the overall picture all the time, but trying to piecemeal kind of some situational stuffs to give yourself every little advantage you can find.
Yeah, and Gary, walk us through the final few swings of, the championship match. You guys were battling. And have an outstanding slide hitter, and you guys streaked her a little bit towards the end there.
Yeah, I think back to between our match and then also the Louisville match. I mean, one of the things Louisville did well is with their being balanced offense, they could attack anywhere along the net with any hitter in any situation and really tried to exploit what Eric was talking about with what matchup may be in front of them. And so maybe the left side's got the advantage against the setter, or you've got the advantage against a smaller left side blocker with the slide. And then for us in the final match of what Sydney was doing, our setter, I thought she was doing a really good job of being able to go antenna to antenna, knowing situationally what could happen. With Dana in the middle, she draws a lot of attention, and being able to have a setter that can feel, all right, what is going to happen defensively on the other side of the net, and then feel comfortable going to both antennas with how they were defending is a really good thing to have.
Great.
As a high school coach, I'm just going to say this: a balanced offense leads to happier players and happier parents and happier administrations, right? But there's that same question, right? Like high school teams don't have the same 5 attackers that Louisville has, right? And so how do we kind of figure out Do we want to just put our best 2 hitters at outside and only set them, or do we want to still balance it and mix it up as much as possible, not just to have happy players, but to have a good offense? Jalen, what do you think about that? Put your high school coach shoes on.
Yeah, I think it comes back down to, we're talking about balanced offense, and I know we talked about the 6-2 and stuff like that, but what Eric and Gary said about it's a conversation with the setter. Gary talked about he had, obviously I think probably the best setter in the country the last couple of years. And we thought Hilly did a great job of just like managing and understanding situations and getting the ball to where they needed to go. Obviously, Wisconsin had a bunch of really good athletes. We said phenomenal slide hitter, Mike. They had like 4, but the thing, I think is important is just getting good swings over and over again. And sometimes that's setting the player that everyone knows the ball's going to, and sometimes that's setting the player that maybe no one thinks the ball's going to, but they have a really good situation because of the pass or because of, a specific maybe where the ball is being set from or something like that. So I think kind of hammering home and training those situations, whichever they may be, that's something we look at. We try to self-scout ourselves offensively and try to find our deficiencies and, maybe think about, okay, hey, these guys, we do this pretty well, but we don't do this very well. We don't like setting this player in this certain situation, So, I would say probably for high school volleyball, everyone has a 0-1 that they're going to set all the time, but maybe in certain situations, training, in this certain situation in rotation 4, we never set this outside from this situation. So maybe getting a ton of reps in practice in terms of maybe getting the setter and the outside hitter and the team comfortable, like, hey, we're going to train this situation. So when it's 24-23, when everyone expects you to just set a high pipe to your other outside hitter, maybe throwing a go out to your other 0-2 at the end of the game, just because you trained it all week or, all season, maybe that's the difference for you. So I think just getting comfortable in certain situations, I think is really, really important for a balanced offense, and not necessarily thinking, okay, well, this person got 30 sets and this person got 20 sets and this, because I don't think volleyball works that way. But I think just if your setter feels comfortable in certain situations, I think that's probably the, I guess the definition of a balanced offense.
So to answer VB Man's question, would you just recommend going through all these scenarios in practices and then in match, the setter has the freedom to decide what he or she wants to do in those situations?
I think making sure the setter knows that that you trust them to run the offense is the most important thing. Just because as a coach, and I don't know how Eric and Gary feel, we're all on the defensive side of things, and I like to kind of say our old assistant that just left us, he always calls it playing a video game. He hates when he feels like he has to play a video game from the sidelines. So I think just working on those specific situations, whichever they may be, I think are really, really important. And if you coach in enough matches or play enough matches, you can kind of see the patterns of okay, wow, we always get stuck in this rotation, or not very good setting, I don't know, setting a go from this situation or setting a long distance, whatever it is, those situations, I think you should practice over and over again. Or, hey, we're not a great passing team. We pass a lot of balls to the 10-foot line. So maybe we don't spend our whole practice passing balls at the top of the net because we spend, I don't know, 70% of the time at the 10-foot line anyway, So based on whatever your personnel and your team is, I think that's the situation, especially for the setter. I think you should put your setter in a lot.
Yeah, one of the things we'll do a lot in practice is create situational 66 type scenarios where we're starting 19-19, playing to 25, and each side has to have a kill from all 3 positions, from the left, the middle, and the right. And so if you're setting your top outside who gets a lot of sets in a match in the first point, well, now you've got to still win, creating kills through your middle, through your right side to actually win the game. So we'll do a lot of that in practice to kind of forcing our setter to think through, all right, how do I get people involved? How do I spread out the offense? How do I manipulate what the defense is going to see? And then they get to 25 and haven't finished all 3 tasks. And the other side can just keep coming back until they finish the task that we had at hand. So it's a way to kind of create a scenario to put your team into having to really think through that, where you're not just riding one player at kind of the high school level to 40 kills in a match.
We've got some really good questions in, but to keep it moving, I'm going to throw these questions to the panel and ask that we have maybe a 30-second or shorter answer to them. So, Eric, if you'll take this first one. Coach to setter question, level of strategic play calling versus allowing organic offensive rhythm. How often are you going to tell your setter or not set this play or run this play?
I think it's hard to just give a generic answer to that. I think Jalen's right on. It's about kind of that relationship with your setter, trying to create that trust that you believe that she or he can do things at a high level, but also having an understanding of where they're in on that spectrum. We try to stay away from calling plays from the sideline. Like, we want our setter out there running the show and doing what she does. But I think there's times where you get them, if there's a timeout or something like that, we'll set up some plays and identify what we think is a weakness or where we should be running our offense out of. And I think you also need to be a little careful in that, because you obviously can't dictate the situation. A perfect pass is going to be one thing, and obviously if you're not doing that, then you're going to lead to some other decisions. But I just think it's I don't know, by player, it's a little different. I think you should, as a coach, get a feel for how much you trust your setter, basically.
Great. Gary, how would you answer this question? In high school, do you always want your best player hitting outside?
It's a great question. I think when you're looking at it from kind of the younger age groups, you look at where most balls end up and kind of the level where you're trying to create points. I think that's one of the things we always look at is, all right, where are you scoring points? And you score more from the offensive side than the defensive side. And most of your balls end up going to the outside. We want our middles to be dynamic. We want them to be able to be moving laterally and being able to move quick. So I think it's kind of based on the personnel you have, but also understanding that a lot of balls will end up at the outside regardless of the level you're playing at.
Jalen, this question from Alexis, this is going to dive into some stats here that you may or may not know, but is there a minimum percentage that you try to keep your middle hitters involved? You keeping track of that stuff? Oh, you're on mute, Jalen.
My bad.
There we go.
Trying to keep, 30% of your offense down the middle of the court. That was a number we talked about whenever I was on the men's side. Actually, it was a little bit higher, just because you set a little more BIC, maybe in men's volleyball than you do in women's volleyball. So we try to keep about 30-ish%. I know some of it is obviously with the slide. So we try to stay around there. We were actually a little bit higher this year. So our goal is to kind of stay just over around 30% down the middle of the court to our two middle attackers.
Awesome. So about 1 out of 3. And then last question for a quick answer, Eric. Is it always best to bracket your 5-1 setter with your best middle, I imagine, to the setter's left, and your best outside to your setter's right?
Yeah, I'm always cautious to say always. I think you got to look, on the outside piece. We've come out of the mindset when you have a really well-rounded outside, that's a good ball control kid, can attack out of the back row. They may be better suited sometimes in your two if you can have some back row offense out of them, because then it gives you a little more balance. You get into an 0-1 and an M1, 2 to rotations, it becomes pretty stagnant, I think. So, I mean, the common thought is you have your best attackers when you don't have as many attackers in the front row, and they're going to get you out of some jams when people know where the ball is going. But again, I think you just got to look at your personnel and be mindful and creative about what you're putting together.
Awesome. Great discussion.